Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. I understand that many people are still going to be filtering in, but in the interest of time, we are going to get started. So this is our first ever, but hopefully not last, Reclaiming Our Rights event. My name is Dr. Felisha Eugenio. I'm joined by some of my co-residents here, as well as our phenomenal guest speakers. And we are so excited for what's in store for you guys. This is something that we've been very passionate about. We are all physicians at Charles Drew University and MLK Outpatient Center in South LA. So as it is, our university has a mission that is about social justice and about representing for the underserved. And we felt that it was our duty, not only as human beings, but as physicians of this community, to really put this information out there. And so I'm going to hand the mic over to the rest of our team members to give you a little bit more of an idea about why we did this and how it all got started.
Hi, I'm Dr. Roquell Laney. So it started actually with a phone call between some of us on what can we do in this current social injustice climate. And we decided we're more than just physicians inside of a clinic. We need to tackle the social injustice crisis that's at hand, because it's a public health crisis. And so we got together and decided we were going to create this wonderful webinar to try to help our community and the population that we serve.
Yeah, and I'm Dr. Soraya Boumediene. So Roquell and I, as well as Felisha, kind of brainstormed this idea about a month and a half ago. You know, all of us here, including our panelists, we all have a very fundamental commitment to equality, equity, and justice. And as physicians, you know, police brutality is a public health crisis. And so it's our job to not only take care of our patients, but take care of our community. So the ultimate goal of this is to spread knowledge as far and wide as we can and hopefully save lives.
And I'm Julian Hinson. I am one of several of these team members. And to be frank, our entire mission as physicians is simply the prevention of negative health outcomes. We don't care if they are heart failure related. We don't care if they're diabetes related. And we don't care if they're gunshot wound related. Our business is hopefully stopping a negative outcome. So we are here with the hope of spreading information that does just that. And I'm looking forward to sharing the rest of the evening with you all.
Thank you everyone for answering those questions. And it's just for us to be able to gauge how effective this information was. We're hoping that by the time we ask you these same questions afterwards, that you know, we see here 52% of you said that you have minimal knowledge of what your rights are when interacting with police, and that can be scary. The fact that there are so many of us out there who really don't know, and we get into situations without this knowledge. And so we have a great night ahead for you. And without further ado, we'll have Dr. Julian Hinson introduce our first speaker.
I have the honor and the opportunity to introduce Dr. Italo Brown, MD, MPH. This is you're all in for a treat. This is an interesting man. He's a graduate of Morehouse College. He's a graduate of Boston University. He is a graduate of, most importantly, the Meharry Medical College. It's the only one of those schools that matters, but he might disagree. The point is that this is a gentleman who is currently actually an assistant professor in emergency medicine at Stanford University. He is also one of the clinical instructors in the Social and Emergency Medicine Institute at Stanford. And throughout his career, just kind of adding to his bio a little bit, Italo has been at the front lines of social medicine and health equity. He's currently the Chief Impact Officer at Trat Medicine. One of the attendees on the call may actually, if we get a chance to discuss questions, may actually have something to say about that as well. He's also one of the 40 under 40 leaders in minority medicine as named by the National Minority Quality Forum. I personally know him for his ability to speak. Others will get the treat of hearing him or seeing him write. He has served with ABC News, their medical unit. He's contributed to health equity and wellness pieces in the New York Times, USA Today, GQ. You can catch that YouTube video right now. Emergency Medicine News, and The Root. Italo, this is a long and drawn out introduction, but the idea is just to give people a sense of how varied a person they're dealing with when they hear your answers to some of the questions that we've got coming up. All right.
I appreciate your words, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So the first question is, have you, ever had an interaction with the police in which you felt you did not know your rights?
I think that that's an interesting question. For a lot of my interactions, especially as a young person, I didn't know my rights. I believe that I could literally chronologically go down instances. I grew up in Sacramento, California, where there is a notoriously corrupt, I wouldn't say corrupt entirely, I would say notoriously aggressive police presence, specifically towards African Americans. And it spreads all the way through parts of Northern California, whether you're talking about Richmond, Oakland, Stockton. This is kind of the DNA of some of the officers that I've dealt with growing up. And it's funny because I also grew up with two guys who ended up becoming police officers, two of my best friends. But as young people, we didn't realize that that's what was happening was violation of our rights, whether it was asking us to get out of a car and looking inside of our vehicle without asking, whether it was having dogs come to our car and vehicles while driving through other states, and then even personally, like essentially stop and frisks happening when I was a young person. I'm not 100% certain if as an adult I've had those same rights violated, although as an ER physician, I see tons of patients who come through the doors who are apprehended. And while in police custody, several things are happening that I initially knew was wrong and had to go up against this degree of authority. And there are times where that has been met with a lot of resistance, a lot of outright vitriol towards me as a Black provider. Specifically giving you an example, I remember one time I worked in the Bronx. I trained in Jacoby and Montefiore in the Bronx, and again, NYPD is a different animal altogether. But I remember one time I had a brother that came in and he was intoxicated, and the officer basically asked me to collect blood samples for him. And I was like, this doesn't even sound right. It sounds like a violation and he goes, well, the patient told me I can get it, so you just go ahead and do it. And I was like, wait, first and foremost, I'm the provider. This is my patient. I owe you nothing. Second of all, how can an intoxicated person consent to giving blood? I have no clue how that works. And so, I've had multiple instances where these rights have been violated of my patients and have had to stop residents, stop coworkers, and even talk to my fellow attendings about these occasions. So it's a long-winded answer to what you said, which is absolutely.
In light of that, two questions. One, what will you tell those who are younger, those who you mentor, those who maybe should you decide to eventually have kids, what will you tell them about what they should expect to know about their own rights when dealing with law enforcement?
Well, the first thing, it starts with me. It starts with my own understanding of what their rights are and taking a sincere interest in that. The first thing that I'm going to encourage them to do is to always be educated. If they are young, you do not have to consent to doing anything unless I'm physically present. You can pay attention, you can follow instructions, but you do not have to do something unless I'm physically present. And then I also believe that it's important to go through and rehearse with them steps of how these different things occur. Like if they get pulled over, talk through the entire process with them, whether it ends up as something that's like, all right, we'll let you off with a warning, or you get a ticket, or if they ask you to step out of a vehicle, like just go through these scenarios with them and genuinely educate them to be active in the process and not just at affect. And then I think that the next part is I would not allow them to to think about this in a silo, but to think about this as like there are multiple pieces at play here. It is not just an isolated event. It can it may be more than just a singular stop. It may be a continuum of racist activities. It may be targeting. It may be a spectrum of brutality, a spectrum of gender profiling, or whatever the case. So to try to challenge them to think outside of the conventional box around policing in communities.
So you alluded a little bit to this earlier, the idea that as an emergency medicine physician, you come into unique contact with the law at various points.
Yeah.
Has your status as going from an individual who had, we'll say, less money to an individual who
has even less
minus
money,
student dope, who has some, the student debt, has some money. Has your position in terms of affluence changed any of your opinions with regard to law enforcement and the law?
So I'm going to try to separate that question. My opinions regarding law enforcement are not only backed by like decades and decades of interaction that as a Black community we've had, but also around personal experience with police in my own life, as well as like watching my friends and family members have these experiences. But those are both positive and negative. So I want to focus on the fact that I do have positive experiences. I grew up, I went to the OK program. If any one of you are familiar with that, it used to be a program that existed to take children, I guess, who were in underserved communities, and it would expose them to different sports and athletics, as well as give them activities to do, and you would participate in these things with officers. So I grew up seeing Black officers as well as interacting with them in a casual sense. So it changed that tone for me. The second thing I would say is, I guess talked about earlier, is I grew up with friends who ended up becoming officers. So I have direct connection with people that I can have these discussions with. And even as intense as those discussions can get, knowing that they are my brothers at the end of the day allows me someone I can go through these scenarios and talk about whether or not there are opportunities for us both to grow. I've done ride-alongs with police officers. I've done ride-alongs with my friends. I've talked to groups of officers about social determinants of health in ways that they can approach certain situations that do not require them to, be more aggressive. So that kind of back and forth conversation is helpful and is positive, and that colors part of my viewpoint. With that said, I do think that, one, I've not really seen much of a change. They can't tell that I'm a doctor when I'm driving a car. It does not matter. You can't look and say, this is a guy that just saved my partner's life. It's not going to resonate the same way. I can't prove to them when I'm driving home from a shift at 2 a.m. and I'm going slightly faster than the speed limit that I'm going home like that because I'm tired and I want to get home. Those conversations don't seem to make it to the front part of the table, rather. So I don't see much of a difference from how I'm treated. Only thing that's different is I have more access to the knowledge and I get more interaction with them because of where I work.
One of our teammates, it appears, may be able to join us in a couple seconds. I'm looking forward to possibly having him. While I wait for him to jump on, let me add one more question. So we've talked about what you might tell others. We've talked about, your state kind of in terms of as being an emergency medicine physician. And you've kind of alluded a little bit to your concerns as far as being aware of the police going forward. So what do you say to somebody who completely disagrees with you with regards to your rights and with regards to the law?
I invite them to come shadow with me. I give them an N95 mask and say, come work a night shift with me. Let me show you about what it means to see a patient who's brought in who, just because they are intoxicated or belligerent, doesn't mean that they deserve to have their rights infringed upon. I show them the different ways that people refer to them, not just as patients or as people who are apprehended, but as perps. I let them see the officers rifle through their clothes as I go through a primary survey to make sure that there's no trauma to the patient. I talk about how the patient has been handcuffed despite having physically no ability to strike back because they are either A, so intoxicated, or B, they are physically injured to the point where they can't make a move, but they're still handcuffed to the bed. So I let them see those things, and then they can make their own decisions at that point.
Before I take over the, everything else, let me ask the rest of my team if you guys have any questions you'd like to ask Dr. Brown. The rest of my Reclaiming Our Rights team, not just the rest of the population. I should probably leave that out open.
We do have a question from one of our audience members. So even though it's a violation of our rights, what would you do, or what should we do if we feel that upholding our rights could end up in physical harm?
If you, in general, or in terms of when I get patients like that in the emergency department, because that changes things.
Let's go for your patients, because we actually have a couple of individuals whose.
I was going to say there may be people who are better suited to answer that question in general that are on this panel, but when I get them in the emergency department, the first thing that I say is, you are a patient. You are therefore protected by the physician. And if there's at any point that you feel like your rights are being infringed upon, you have 100%, you can tell us, and we can ask officers to leave. We can ask for officers to be replaced. We can ask that this patient be moved to a certain place. We can ask for cuffs to be removed. We can file reports. We can take badge numbers. We can do all of those different things. We can document in our charts in a way that is very honest and interprets what we see, and also captures what your stance is on things. These are our responsibilities of care providers, specifically because you are now under our care. They brought you to us, and what their reasons for bringing you to us are very clear and well outlined for police officers. So once I see you, you are someone that's under my care, and I take it that seriously.
Thank you so very much. I'm going to hand the floor back to you, Felisha. And you're currently muted.
Second time tonight. We knew it would happen. So we do have potentially another one of our presenters. I believe he is trying to get connected, but there were a few more questions, Dr. Brown, if you'd be comfortable answering them from our audience members. They've started to filter in. So let's see. So the first question here says, do you see a difference in the way Black female patients versus Black male patients are treated?
In general, or in regards to those that are apprehended? If we're just talking about patients, I would say that you're going to see a clear delineation in gender differences as well as in racial differences in patients. I do think that, for example, give you a very clear-cut example. If a female patient comes in overnight and there are service issues, I've seen female patients wait longer to get certain exams done, especially if they have a GYN complaint. That is an inequity in healthcare. That's something that's wrong. I've seen African-American patients be triaged to lower care zones where having actual higher severity issues. We know that the data shows that Black patients who are are subject to poverty, patients who have housing insecurity are more likely to get hallway beds as opposed to being placed in rooms. And even patients who are incarcerated, meaning they've already been arrested, and they're more likely to get put in psychiatric zones as opposed to zones that are with common population. So there's clear disparities around this in the emergency department, and I think that it's important to note that these disparities are compounded by things like systemic racism, structural racism, as well as implicit bias. We can go on and on and on about these effects, but more importantly, it just does not go away that easily. This is compounded.
And another question from one of our audience members is that when you did have these encounters in the past with police, did you ever report any of those instances? And if you didn't report them, was it because, like you said, you're not sure if this was even a violation?
On more than one occasion, so where I worked in the Bronx, the precinct was right behind my hospital. So I walked straight over there on several occasions after my shift. I remember one time there was an officer who basically dared me to say something. And it was after I told him to stop agitating a patient. Patient was in there, they were cursing back and forth. I asked the patient to stop cussing. He said, "I'm fine, I won't cuss, but this guy keeps bothering me. He's being more aggressive." The officer then took a mask or sheet and then tried to say he was spitting and wrapped it across his face. And so I asked the officer and the partner to be removed from the emergency department. They removed themselves from the triage for the resuscitation bay, and he and I exchanged words. And then that's when he threatened me, and I said, "I will be right there as soon as my shift is over, maybe even before my shift is over, to report you, because I don't deal with that." And he called me some colorful names, and that's just how it goes. But fortunately, if you are a provider of color, you come with a certain degree of thick skin, and it didn't matter what type of officer that was. I was prepared to do what was right. At the end of the day, this is one instance of many instances, and I'm sure that a person, whether they are practicing in New York or California or Texas or anywhere else, can speak to these instances where officers overstep their boundaries and violate patient rights. The major thing is, if you are someone that's listening and you're a care provider, do not feel ashamed for calling it out. Do not feel like you have to escalate it through the appropriate channels. You can file the report yourself. You can escalate to your attending if you like, and you can always document these things heavily in the chart so that if they are ever used as legal record, they can be accessed and it has your clear statement of what happened. The first thing that I recommend that people always do is, if you have a patient that's brought in custody, take down the names of officers and the badge numbers. Use it as a part of your documentation, just so you know. As much as you would write down an MRN of a patient's number, as much as you would write down the sequence of events, you can write that down. In fact, I usually write it on the edge of the bed. So they come in, they put them in the stretcher in front of me. I write it right there on the sheet.
And that's actually a perfect segue into our last question. As many of us saw in the news this week, Jacob Blake was reported to be handcuffed to his bed, which I think we can all agree was an unnecessary measure. So as a physician, when you see something like that happen, can you step in to say that this is a bit too much? Or how is it that a doctor is able to order handcuffs for a patient when they're clearly incapacitated?
So this is a little bit tricky, right? The first part of it is you have to be able to make an assessment. If the handcuffs somehow inhibit your ability to make an assessment of a patient, you can ask for them to be removed. The first thing. The second thing, and there's like certain stipulations around it, right? So they'll say, if I remove these handcuffs, I can't leave the space. And you're like, well, you don't have to leave the space. You can sit outside of this curtain if it makes you feel better. So I would familiarize myself, if I were you, with those particular things you can do off the bat to do an assessment of a patient. Second thing is, they do have soft restraints. So you can ask, do soft restraints qualify? Can I put a patient in a soft restraint, 2-point wrist restraint, something like that? A posy, you can ask that to the officer and do the same thing, because they can have the similar effect and don't have to be as restrictive as a handcuff. The third thing that you can do is, and this is what I would recommend for people who feel more comfortable doing it, you can ask the cuffs to be removed. You can say, you don't have any liability for me. I'll stay in the room with the patient to do my assessment. And you can stand outside. If something goes wrong, I'll just yell. Fourth thing you can do, ask for security from the hospital to come in instead of the officers there. Security from hospitals often have different thresholds. They are often familiar with the patients. So you might have a frequent flyer, somebody that you know multiple times coming in for different things, and say, hey, I know this guy. Remove the cuffs. I'm gonna stand here. My security guards are right here, just behind the sheet. And that helps you to kind of alleviate that. The major goal is, one, protect your patient. Two, protect yourself. Three, make sure that whatever you're doing is in the best interest of the patient and your ability to deliver care that is of the standard of care. So.
Okay, hey, Dr. Brown. So you were right. You can't draw blood without a warrant, but you said something, and I'm just curious because when I have clients who go to jail, I subpoena medical records, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to have a swearing match between a regular person and the police. I just don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you said that if you feel like the police are violating your rights, then you can say something to you. But is it against some kind of medical thing that somebody has to actually ask you to put that in their records? If you see the police manhandling them, if you
no. So I definitely report those events. I was saying that if you ever feel unsafe as a patient and you think it's because of that relationship between you and the officer, you can notify the attending, and the attending can make a note of that, as well as request for that officer to be replaced with a different officer, or you can stay in the room, or you can have a security guard who you know be in that space.
Because I can tell you, you guys are so important to the criminal justice system, whether you know it or not. Because a good criminal defense lawyer is going to subpoena records, right? And if you put down what you observe in your care for the patient, like if you hear the officer saying nigga, like people don't want to say that word, I'm gonna say it because it's ugly and people need to understand it. And if y'all can't tell, I'm animated, but whatever, right? If you see the police officer saying derogatory things, you need to put that in the medical records, because
I agree wholeheartedly.
I mean, I've had so many clients tell me this happened and this happened, and the police officers are just lying through their teeth. When their lips are moving, they're lying, right? And I've literally had, even like in the case of, like, say when they went to an apartment, right? The police officer swore that my client gave consent, right? Except for my client said, no, Miss Jones, I didn't give consent. He said the police officer kicked in the door, and in fact, I got evicted from my apartments for doing illegal activity, criminal activity, and they had to repair the door. So when my client told me that, I subpoenaed the maintenance records at the apartments and proved that the door was kicked in, and the police officer just flat out lied that my client opened the door, which is why I tell people, even if they have a warrant, I know you don't want to do this, let them kick the door in, because at least then you can prove that they came in without your consent, right? Because if you open the door and they bully their way in or whatever, you can't prove that you didn't give them consent. And it's just been my experience in 25 years that people want to believe the police. They don't want to believe black people or brown people or people charged with crimes.
I wanted to just add to your point real fast. I also document exactly what the patient says happened, not so much what the officer says happened, because there can be a ton of inconsistencies, and more importantly, the officer is not your patient, the patient is your patient.
Right. And then I was also going to ask, because I know that you can't, so are the officers in a room when you're asking medical questions to your clients?
I always ask the patient, the officers to leave every single time.
Because you have to protect the patient's like health care, and so, but officers come in like they run everything.
No,
right?
that's 100% right. I think the hard part is in doing that, you just have to have a certain degree of comfort asking for the officers to leave, whether it's you in terms of your own safety. Like, I genuinely feel safe when I have a client. I'm like, all right, at worst come to worst, I can either get away. If this does turn violent, I might be able to handle myself. So I feel comfortable telling the officer, stand outside, I'm going to ask these questions. The other part of it is there will be parts of stories that they tell you when the officer is not there that are super significant, especially if you're coming from a medical stance, like how an injury occurred, whether or not they're intoxicated by one thing or another, whether they're not intoxicated at all, whether it's not the violence that you saw inflicted was not an assault by the person who they said is assaulting them, but someone else. It could be their family member. Like, there's so many more details to the story that happen based upon removal of that entity from the room. But you have to feel comfortable to ask the officer and not be like, stand on your morals in terms of saying like, I need you out of the room, and just say it firm, just one time. Hi, I'm Dr. Brown. I understand that you were here, you're with this patient. I'd like him uncuffed, and I'd like it if you just step outside the room. I'll come get you when I'm finished.
Exactly. So you guys need to do what Dr. Brown said. I'm just saying. So that's
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's my presentation. It's very, very, very complicated. Ayinde understands that the law is just complicated. So there are a whole bunch of different nuances because they can fly over your property. If they can see it from an aerial view, then you have no expectation of privacy. So I say, whatever you don't want nobody to see, put it in your house. And if the police come to your house, hide it, right? Like, don't just like have it sitting on the table. Now, y'all laughing. I'm serious as a heart attack.
I know you are. It's not a laugh. This is a joy.
So so you do have rights. And as I said before, keep it. So, because the second the Supreme Court came out with furtive movements, in every offense report, Ayinde, did you have this? You kept saying furtive movements in the offense report. So I was like, what furtive mean? Police didn't even know what it meant. They were just using language that allowed the police to kill somebody or hurt somebody. So, and I give them upon request, these Know Your Rights with the Police trainings. And because I just think people need to know their rights. And record some more. And I believe that record them and don't tell them you record them.
I love the conversation that's happening. You'll forgive me. I'm going to push us on just a little bit because we are piling up with the questions on the side and we still want to make sure we hear from everybody.
Okay,
thank you
I'm
so
done.
very much. No, this is fantastic.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. That was such a wonderful and informative presentation. And we will hold questions until after our speakers, but our next speaker is Mr. Ayinde Jones. So Mr. Jones was raised in North Hollywood, California, and attended Cal State Northridge before attending law school at the University Laverne College of Law. While attending law school, Ayinde was the regional manager for a nonprofit organization supporting children and adults with developmental disabilities. Ayinde has practiced law for nearly a decade as a criminal defense and family attorney, with a primary focus of advocating for historically disenfranchised people of color. As a husband and father, Ayende's most important achievement is being a man and a family man, and he is committed to leading by example and humbly responding to the direction that God leads. His most valued attribute is his belief that with God all things are possible. And without further ado, we have Mr. Ayinde Jones.
All right. Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I want to thank all the people who have tuned in. We really thank you that we can all be a part of this conversation and bringing more of a dialogue to what we all have in common, our need to protect ourselves and our communities. So yeah, I'm an attorney, almost 10 years now. And so I'm very aware of the law and how it applies to me, and I know how to protect myself. And I'm very well coursed through many years of understanding and learning. But I also understand that I am a Black man, and this is 2020. So needless to say, I'm sensitive to the needs of our community. And I understand that when the police see me, they don't see an attorney, they see a Black man. They don't see a husband or a father or a Christian or a Laker fan. They see a Black man. And so I'm aware of that. So whenever I interact with the police and I inform others, friends as well, I inform them that first they must have common sense. You know, the Bible talks about in all your getting, get understanding. So it's important just to know where we are in this climate, especially now in 2020. So as Ms. Jones touched on, all the great laws that are meant to protect us, all our different amendment rights, constitutional protections, but they mean nothing if we don't have common sense in how we interpret them and how we interact with them. You know, I tell my friends, so I'm pretty much the only one of my friends who has graduated from college, gone on to higher education. So needless to say, my friends lean on me heavily. because a lot of them are still involved in different endeavors, some of them legal, some of them illegal. So I give a lot of advice, and I have a lot of different people around me in my circle. But I tell them all, if you don't live through each encounter that you have with the police, it can be a problem. So here's the deal. I'm a father, first and foremost. I have 2 young boys, black boys. And so unfortunately, I have to have the conversations with them that other people do not have to have. I have to talk with my children about how to interact with the police, what to be aware of, to be mindful. Recently, we've watched all these things that happen in our society, in the country. We've seen countless amount of people, unarmed people, people of color, men, women, and children being gunned down by the police. So we must be mindful that any interaction with the police, no matter how simple it starts, any interaction, no matter how simple it starts, can be deadly. We see people dying from car accidents. We see the people dying from traffic stops because of a broken tail light, tinted windows. And so as people of color, we must understand whenever we encounter the police, it comes with many misconceptions and preconceptions about who we are and the danger we might be to the police. So we must be mindful of that in any interaction. So of course, we have to educate our children. We're mindful. So my beautiful wife, she's an educator. She recently got a book. It's called Mommy, Did You Hear the News? So this is a book by 2 wonderful women authors, women of color. And it basically talks about how to have that interaction with your child and the conversation that's needed when you tell them about the interaction with the police. And so to sum the book up, it just says simply, when you encounter the police, there's only one thing to remember: you must live. You must be alive. That is the key, no matter what. So even if you're stopped and you believe it's wrong, even if the officers are violating your rights, even if you know for sure that you're not doing what you've been accused of doing, the number one thing is you have to live. So Ms. Jones, the wonderful attorney, she touched on many of these things about the police don't have a right to search your vehicle without consent or probable cause. That's true. The police cannot enter your home without a warrant or without consent. That's true. But you also must understand, in adding to what Ms. Jones says, is that we're not in a power position or a position of power when we're dealing with the police. The police have guns. They can end your life with or without cause. And all too often we find that the police, they're willing to act with a deadly force because they probably know that the culture of law enforcement will protect them. And then, as we all know, there's a thing called jury nullification. What it means is that one person alone could find someone not guilty. So the police are comfortable with ending lives, knowing that I probably won't lose my job. I'll probably still be protected. And if I go to court, and if I'm tried before a jury of my peers, I can probably bet on at least one person believing that I acted with good cause. So we must be mindful of how we interact with the police. My children are always at the forefront of what I do. I have to make sure that I equip them with all that they need. And so that'll always be my message to them. Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on.
Okay, because my screen just went off, but it's okay. I'll act like I can see myself. But so I must believe that I must give my children all that they need. So with that in mind, Miss Jones gave all the beautiful laws that protect us, but my message is just one of common sense. When we interact with the police, we must be humble. We must be respectful. Now, it may sound like I'm saying we just got to bow down to the police, but that's in a sense you have to, because you have to live. The police all too often take lives of people of color without cause. They don't care if it's being recorded, as we saw with George Floyd in Minnesota. They did what they did in full view, in full daylight. It didn't matter what they did because they felt as though they had good cause to do it. So we have to be mindful when we interact with the police. Ms. Jones touched on the fact that first and foremost, we cannot break the law. So a good story. Just recently, I'm coming from my office in Los Angeles. I pull out my vehicle. I'm in a car, nice car, it doesn't matter. I'll pull out. And so I hit a U-turn on a busy street, and I knew I shouldn't have done it. Just so happens a motorcycle cop was there, pulled me over. So I know I'm in the wrong. So I can't be defensive. I can't ask the police, what are you doing? I don't want to take that route. So he pulled me over. I made sure everything was visible. I turned my car off. I rolled my windows down. I made sure I had all the documents that I needed. Cop pulled me over. He asked for license registration. Now, my birthday was just about a month ago, and my license expired on my birthday. So I had yet to get a new license. So here I am, no license, hit an illegal turn. Cop pulls me over. So, I have to be humble in our interaction. Long story short, the cop gave me a warning only, but I think it had a lot to do with my interaction with him. I was not trying to be defensive. I was not trying to, act like I didn't do anything wrong. I was simply submitting to what took place, while also being respectful of the officer. Now, I've also had interactions with the police that have not been as friendly. I've been stopped before without cause. Police have said that I didn't put on a signal. I'm responsive. I'm responsive to that. I've been stopped before. They told me my music was too loud. I'm aware that I know what can and cannot be. I've been stopped before because police say my vehicle matched a description of a vehicle that committed a crime. So, and these are all times while I'm an attorney. So when I interact and I know the police are wrong, still I'm respectful. I must be humble in my interactions because that person has a gun and I need to get home. But still, I know my rights. So respectfully, when you interact with the police, you can ask them for a supervisor to come to the scene, and they have to do that by law. You don't want to, you don't want to cuss them out and say, get the doggone supervisor here now, because that can be another problem. But you do have a right to request a supervisor. As Ms. Jones touched on, you do have a right to get the officer's information. Very important, though, that everything that is done with the police is done with respect and with an attitude of humility, because once again, you have to get home to your family. They have a gun, and if they feel any reason that they can take your life, we've seen them do it, and so we must be mindful of that. So, I won't take too much time because I do want to answer questions, but my message is one of common sense. It's one of understanding. It's one that just says, listen, when we interact with the police, know your rights, very important, but also very important to use common sense to get home to the people that love you and that you love. Do not give the police an excuse to harm you because they may use it. Do not give the police any cause to harm you because they may use it. So like Ms. Jones touched on, don't break the law first and foremost, very important. Listen to the laws. The laws were created by men to give a natural consequence to your actions. But I am mindful that laws are made by men who are imperfect. There used to be the law that we as people of color are only 3/5 of a person. So I'm aware that laws change. And so I'm not saying that all laws are right laws, but still we're subject to them. And so as an attorney, I tell my clients, I tell my family members, I tell my friends, it's important to know where you are, but also important to know who you are. We are, as people of color, we must interact with the police a little different than everyone else, because as we see, our lives can be taken. And what sense does it make if I'm wrong, if I'm right in the situation? Say the police violate my rights. They did something wrong, and I tell them about it. What good is it if I'm dead, but I'm right? Okay, so I would rather, take the lower position, even if I know the police are wrong, interact with them in a way that allows me to get out of the situation, to get home to my family, and then you call an attorney, you call me, you call Miss Jones, wherever you are, because then the attorney will take it from there. There's a proper form for when police, violate your rights, what you can do. And that form is the courthouse. That form is not on the sidewalk. That form is not wherever you're at with your friends at a party. You tell the police your peace of mind. That's not the place. The place to deal with the police when they violate your rights is with a person who is trained to deal with a violation. You call an attorney, you get the information, and you will have a good case as long as you're alive. So, that's all I would like to say at this point. I would like to answer questions, but I really value all the people that have come together today, the doctors, the attorneys, the bail bondsmen, the professionals. There's an African proverb that says it takes a village, and it's true. All of our gifts together can make our society better. When we come together as a people, when we add value to each other, when we see the gifts in other people by coming together, I think it's a beautiful thing. So I'm happy to be a part of this. I hope this is something that continues. Say God bless you all. Love your family, kiss your kids, and let's all go through this together. I know that we'll get through it. I trust God in it. I know that there will be good that comes from all of this, and I just want to say I'm here to help as needed. So yeah, my name is Ayinde Jones. Whatever I can do, I'm in Los Angeles. You're easy to find me. But yeah, God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. So before we move on to our last speaker of the night, we are going to open up the floor for questions. Many of you may see the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And these questions will be related to any of the information that Ms. Jones or Mr. Jones has presented to us, as well as Dr. Brown. And so one of the first questions that came up is, how well are police familiar with patients' HIPAA privacy? So for instance, in the scenario that Dr. Brown had presented, do you find that police are aware of what HIPAA is and a patient's privacy?
I said, do you want me to answer that one?
It's an open floor, so whoever would like
okay.
to.
But jump in.
I actually don't know the answer to that. My assumption is that they don't know because they continue to violate.
That's my presumption as well.
Correct.
And I actually don't think they care. They very much tend to be ends versus means people. And to go to just really quickly what Mr. Jones said, no relation, or maybe we are related, who knows?
Somewhere down the line.
Notice I said don't talk to the police. So I ain't telling you to tell the police you wrong, you can't do this. I ain't tell you to do that. I'm the mother of a black man who is 6'5", 225. And I told him exactly like you said, Ayinde, I need you to get home alive so I can fight for you, right? Which is why I say be polite, which means don't talk crazy to people, right? Don't roll your eyes, don't do all the stuff. But you can do everything perfect and they can still kill you, and they will still kill you, right? The whole purpose of my Know Your Rights with the police training is even if they kill you, there will be evidence out there to show exactly what happened, right? But that's why I say be polite. I don't talk crazy to the police because I know they have all the power on the side of the street, and so I don't want anyone to think that just because you know your rights mean you have to tell the police that you know your rights. I just need for you to make sure you're able to prove more than just a swearing match about what happened, because you're going to lose that.
I will add that I think so it's very important for if we have people who are in this attendee section and they are physicians or physicians in training, understand that any information that you say or give during the encounter is now collateral for that officer. So if you say, oh, this patient has a history of substance use, or I've seen this patient before, they come in high, you're now giving them more collateral information. So be very mindful of those HIPAA laws and the ways that you can inadvertently reveal information that is private to that patient. If you tell the officer the patient is HIV positive, that's a problem. You can't, it happens so quickly because you'll be in the room and then you'll say something to the nurse like, oh, make sure that you retract the needle because patient's high five or HIV positive. Now the officer who's in the room has that, and it is a part of the way that they create their brand and profile. So even now, so much to where if you state that the patient is COVID positive and how that can change things. So I'm just telling you, be very clear about the way that you interact with officers. I still recommend strongly that you ask for officers to leave the room unless they are absolutely necessary in the event that there's a person who is, for example, so aggressive that they still need help restraining or something like that. They may be able to stay in that point. But I really want you all to think consciously about that.
And exactly to what Dr. Brown said, I have had police officers file additional charges against my clients saying that, oh, they knew they were HIV positive. And so now if there was
and they spit on you or they do
spit up, and it's assault of a public servant. Now all of a sudden they facing more time because you just gave that officer information about a client, and that really wasn't even it. And it's just, good point, but I see it all the time.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question, I think, came about during Dr. Brown's segment, but Jolanda and Ayinde can also speak to this as well. This is actually from one of my best friends from medical school. I'm a primary care pediatrician, and I spend a huge chunk of my day giving anticipatory guidance to patients and families about a huge array of issues. Any advice on how to provide succinct guidance, especially to teens of color, regarding what to do if they find themselves in an encounter with the police? Or if they find themselves in one of the situations that you've been describing, where they're brought into the emergency room by the police, etc.
I'm going to defer to Mr. and Miss Jones. Can I say Miss? Is it, how do you prefer?
It don't matter.
Well, I'm going to defer to you both because I think that in your talks, respectively, you hit some of these points.
I never believe you should talk to the police. I mean, if the police are talking to you, they think you did something. And I didn't talk about common sense in this because I was mindful of time, right? But if somebody doesn't like you and they come and step into you, do you talk to people who ready to fight you, who think you did something? If you're from the hood like me, because I'm from Third Ward, no, right? So the police ain't more special than my friends. The police ain't more special than who I know, right? So when a police officer talking to me, so when they stop me for traffic stops and they're asking, oh, so what you been doing? And all, they ain't none of their business, right? It's just not. And I don't talk to the police. I give them my license and my insurance, and they already know it actually, again, with the technology. So they really don't even need it for me. But that's another story for another day. And then that's it. I'm not having conversations because one of the things I wanted to explain to you is how you can accidentally give information and hurt yourself and you don't even know it, right? So let's say there was a murder last week Tuesday. So most of us don't remember what we was doing last week Tuesday, especially if we ain't commit no murder, right? But for whatever reason, the police think that I did it or you did it, right? And they've already gathered their evidence, and for whatever reason, they think I did it even though I didn't. So they'll come to talk to me, and I think I ain't do nothing, right? So I'm trying to help the police. Oh, well, so what were you doing last week Tuesday? I went to my mother's house, right? Because that's the one thing I remember I did that day, except for when I went to my mom's, I wasn't looking at my clock, right? And so, or my watch or my phone. And so it turns out that I think I get to my mother's house at 3 o'clock, when really I don't get to my mother's house till 4 something. But I'm wrong, not because I'm lying or trying to come up with an alibi. I'm wrong just because I wasn't paying attention to time like that. So now they know I was at my mama's house on Tuesday, right? They go to my mama's house, right? Because they got information from me that seemed harmless, right? Because I did go to my mom's. They go to my mama's and they say, well, did Jolanda come to your house last Tuesday? Yes, she did. But what time did she get there? Lord, you know that girl came in, and I'm about to tell on myself, but at one time, Oprah used to come on at 4 o'clock, right? So, and I was watching Oprah, and Oprah was about to give out them cards to them people. And if that girl didn't knock on that damn door, and I missed her give out the cards, right? Literally, all they have to do is go find out what time the cards got given out at 4:12. Let's say it was at that. So I got to my mom's at 4:12, but I thought I got to my mom's at 3 o'clock, and it wasn't anything nefarious. I was trying to be helpful, and now they're saying I'm lying. She lying, right? Because my mother remembers what time I was there because I interrupted Oprah, right? And so what I'm saying to you, and that's a very simple explanation, because they talking to people, right? It's like all y'all that got kids. I got a kid yet. Kid broke something. What you do when something goes wrong? You split them up. Why? Because you don't want them to get their lies straight, right? Exactly, right? So you got to find out the truth because they're gonna all say different stuff. So then when you go over here, they've heard something. So somebody don't like you. Jolanda did it because in my practice, in my 25 years of practice, people allow their mama and say their mama did stuff not to get locked up, right? So they've already pointed the finger at me. And now the police I've never in 25 years of practice ever had the police think that an honest mistake was an honest mistake. They were like, they lying, they trying to hide stuff. You can't trust them. And if you go and talk to your lawyer first, me or the other lawyer, Jones, and we gonna say, how you know you was at your mama's at 3? Did you have was you looking at your phone? So now you ain't gonna talk to the police because I'm not saying you lying. I don't think you did it, but I need to talk to your mom and find out if your mama can corroborate it. Then when I call your mama say, now she got over here at 4:12 because that's when Oprah was giving out the cars. Then I can say, well, you weren't at your mom's at 4:12. And now we don't have to explain to the police why you were helpful in giving incorrect information. So never talk to the police because you could be hurting yourself when you have no clue.
Yeah, I agree. I agree definitely. If you're under investigation for anything, or the police will question you about any thing that took place, any crime or potential crime, never a good thing to give the police any information. Once always the best thing is to say, I want my attorney, and they may say, well, you didn't do anything wrong, you don't need an attorney, and you say again, I want my attorney, because all police reports pretty much, Ms. Jones knows, they all look the same. It's pretty much like they copy and paste. So yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah. I know they do. I have friends who are LAPD officers, and without saying it, they let me know that pretty much they open a database of reports, fill in the name, and everything else remains the same. So yeah, I wouldn't advise to talk with the police. Now, on the other side, because we don't want the police to be this scary thing, right? But they are. They're meant to protect and serve, but all too often they don't. So I think the question was asking about as a parent of young people, should they talk with the police and things like that. If an investigation is not happening and they're not in trouble or potentially in trouble for committing a crime, yeah, talk to the police. Recently, my wife took our children and our neighbors' children to the police station as a way to just kind of get them used to the police. Because of what I don't want my children to grow up, it's fearing the police, because they're going to see plenty of images on television, and that doesn't represent the whole of police, but that's what we see. So yeah, they went to the police station, they had conversations, they asked questions, they talked, and I want to build that culture in them so that they don't fear the police. Me personally, I don't fear the police, but I'm aware that the police can harm me, and so I'm sensitive to that. So yeah, back to that. Yeah, don't talk to the police. Tell them you want your attorney.
I'd like to add one piece for the family physician who asked that question. If you're going to advise somebody something, advise the parent to have access to an attorney, to start thinking proactively and have that number on hand, so that if there is something that goes wrong and she needs to access, or he needs to access someone with legal knowledge quickly, she can do that.
I want to just add on to something Ayinde said. I'm gonna say this one more again. That's Ebonics. I don't believe every police officer is bad, right? But one bad officer, how many arrests and life screw ups or family screw ups can one officer make in a day? A lot. So the way that I deal with the police, I don't come at them with an attitude. I'm very, very, very polite, and I instructed my son to be the same way. But always know, like if the police just come up and talk to you, they think you did something, whether they tell you or not. Because they're going to be charming at first. They're going to try to find things in common, and they're going to try to make you think that you're not the target, right? One. But I'm very, again, this is not a I hate the police sort of thing. I even dated a cop once. That's another story for another day. But very interesting. But my point is, I think it's great to take kids to meet police, but kids need to understand that, at least in this day and age, especially with Trump, right, where people have been given carte blanche to exercise their racism, that your children have to be warned, right? You have to warn them to be careful when it comes to the police. You have to, because again, you're trying to be, it's more people who was trying to help the police that got locked up and got wrongfully convicted because they thought that the truth would come out, and 10, 15, 25 years later, they figured it out. They've lost everything. So I'm that one that's like, I deal with what I know is there and not what I hope is there. And you can be polite, right? And you can still be pleasant to police, but just be mindful that you can go from witness to suspect in 0 seconds flat.
All right, thank you so much, guys. We're going to table the rest of the questions until the end. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Mr. Don Sullivan. So I'll just give a brief intro. Don Sullivan is married to his wife, Deneen, for 23 years and is a father of 3 and has 1 granddaughter. Don was born and raised in Compton, California, and he attended school in the Compton Unified School District and went on to Pius High School in Downey. After high school, Don went to Cerritos College, where he started a small business and began a career in the U.S. Postal Service. Don served as a mail carrier for 18 years and was shop steward for Branch 24, National Association of Letter Carriers, at the age of 22. After several years in the Postal Service and seeing employees mistreated and discriminated against, Don turned his attention to the many people that were falsely arrested and accused and became a bail bond agent and agency owner in 1997. Don was one of the youngest first-generation bail agency owners in the entire state of California. Sullivan Bail Bonds initially started by bailing out local community members and friends and quickly extended into the likes of Hollywood entertainers and professional athletes. And Celebrity Bail Bonds was then born. Even though they have many high-profile clients, their motto is, "We treat everyone like a celebrity." In addition to running the day-to-day operations of Celebrity Bail Bonds, Don currently attends and serves as a staff minister and director at Glory Christian Fellowship International Church under the leadership of Pastor Alton Trimble. For the past 15 years, Don has also been on the board of directors at Inland Valley Recovery Services, which is one of the premier drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers in the Inland Empire. Don is also the former president and board member of the Upland Foothill Kiwanis. All right, take it away, Don.
Looked like I was muted there. Good evening, everybody. I am Don Sullivan, and I am the owner of Celebrity Bail Bonds. I'm honored to speak with you about how to conduct yourself when you come in contact with law enforcement, and also what to do if you're arrested and detained. I'd like to thank Felisha and Reclaiming Our Rights for trusting me and allowing me to speak with you today. Most people have no clue what we do as bail bondsmen and what value we add to the judicial system. Simply put, the Eighth Amendment says you have a right to bail. We assist people that have been arrested, secure, being released from jail. And we become responsible for that person making all of his or her court appearances.
Don,
Civil rights, huh?
If I interrupt you for just a second, right now you're doing a screen share, so if you just go to the top right again, you can click stop showing screen.
We're top right.
The button that says sharing, and then you click the down menu and stop showing screen.
I don't know where I'm at. The one that says sharing.
Yes.
And stop showing screen.
Yes. And then we'll just be able to see you. Perfect. You got it.
Okay. Civil rights violations are a very serious issue to me, and they can be very hurtful if you ever experience being violated. I've experienced them as a kid and as recently as a year or so ago. I remember as a young kid, maybe 12 or 13 years old, having police contact while growing up in Compton. I remember the police making a stand in front of a running police car on hot summer days and making us put our hands on the black hood of the police car while daring us to take our hands off the car. This was quite intimidating and outright scary. You have several rights in your favor, but that doesn't mean your rights will not be violated. There's procedures in place for police to follow when dealing with the public, but all too often those procedures aren't followed. For most people, a traffic stop can be very stressful, not knowing what lies ahead. First and foremost, you should always see them first. The element of surprise can work against you. You can't be so engaged in phone conversation or conversation with your passengers that it causes you to commit unnecessary traffic violations. Stay focused and keep your eyes on the road for safety reasons as well. You can't be so relaxed and preoccupied that your first sign of them is red lights in your rearview mirror. That's when natural panic sets in, and even the most law abiding citizen can panic. Once you panic, you will make movements that seem innocent to you, but suspicious to an officer that doesn't know you. Even if you panic, gather yourself quickly and don't make any moves. Movement can put you in great danger, and you may not even know that your movement put the officer on the defense. Once you notice them, crack your window so you can speak to them. Keep your hands in plain view and on the steering wheel. Never assume a policeman knows you. Never reach for anything even when they tell you to, simply say, "Are you sure you want me to open my glove compartment?" If the officer tells you it's okay to reach for your glove compartment, talk as you're reaching, saying things like, "Officer, I am now reaching for my glove compartment." Don't make any fast moves either. It would be wise to have your registration, insurance information, and a copy of your driver's license in an envelope placed above in your sun visor. Reaching for your information in your sun visor is less intimidating to an officer. You can always give them the originals once the officers realize you're not a threat to him. Police encounters are escalated automatically because their reason for pulling you over is accusatory and to assert their authority and control a situation. And for you, one of the worst feelings you can have is someone saying you committed an offense that you didn't commit. Now, even though you don't like being pulled over, the most important thing is to go on without being hurt or arrested. Simply put, you want to walk or drive away. No matter how you slice it, you're at a disadvantage when being stopped or detained by police. No matter who you are, it's uncomfortable, it's intimidating, it's frightening. You're in a vice, even if things work out. You're in a situation that's beyond your control. For most people, it's simply unfamiliar ground. Now, how to make the best out of a bad situation? Remain calm and don't raise your voice. Be polite and have a good attitude. Comply with their reasonable requests. What to do if an officer is rude or offensive? Get the officer's name and badge number discreetly if you can. Asking him for it may offend him and make him more combative, causing him to assert unnecessary authority. Know that signing a ticket or being arrested doesn't mean you're guilty. In the event that you feel the officers violated your rights or abused you in any way, go straight to the police department and file a detailed report. Tell the truth and be as accurate as you can. Filing a complaint may never ever help you, but it will help the next person that comes along. It can also work as a deterrent and an encouragement for the officer to conduct himself in a professional manner in future traffic stops. Don't ever give away your rights. You do have a right to remain silent and assert your Fifth Amendment right. You do have a right to not have your car searched. You do have a right to be treated fairly. If you forget everything I've said so far, the one thing you don't want to end up is dead right. Everyone that we've ever seen shot, beaten, or killed by police had rights too. Once you feel that your rights have been violated or you become frightened or intimidated, Ayinde touched on this too. You simply request that a sergeant or watch commander come to the scene. It will definitely prolong your police experience, but it will assure your safety. I honestly wish that I could tell you that everything I said so far will ensure your safety, but I can't. So remember that receiving a citation or being arrested doesn't mean you're guilty, and it is much better than being killed. In the event in the event that you have become detained by police and you're going to be arrested, remain silent, assert your Fifth Amendment right, and ask to speak to an attorney right away. You've heard that from both our attorneys. It's a fact. You got to do it. If the police have something on you, they don't have to ask you anything. They just take you with them. It's nothing to talk about. Contact a family member or a friend that can facilitate your release as expeditiously as possible. Currently, there are laws in place that give you the right to bail. However, those rights are being challenged in this upcoming election. There's even been an opinion written by a Supreme Court justice that says we don't have a right to an attorney. So if they take bail away from us and they don't give us an attorney, what are we going to do? Represent ourselves, sit there until we rot? So in closing, I just want to say this to you. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, never vote without having full understanding of what you're voting for. Read all of your election material and make an educated decision on what you're voting for, and be absolutely sure that you're comfortable living with knowing that your children, your grandchildren, and unborn children will be living under the laws that you have voted for. I'm just want to thank you once again, Felisha, for having me and reclaiming your rights. It's amazing that our release from jail is even being questioned, and there's even legislation about it. After listening to the doctor talk, these policemen are doing it in front of a doctor. That's appalling to me. That's appalling to me. I get it where the handcuffs are on the guy because he's actually in custody, even though he's hurt. I get that part. But to disrespect a doctor, to threaten a doctor in the emergency room, we up against some trying times, folks, and we can't give away any more rights. They're taking them one by one, where it doesn't seem like it's much. We don't have anything more to give. And I just want to say again, thank you, and always protect your rights. God bless you, each and every one of you, and may the good Lord bless you in your greatest area of need.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Sullivan. This has been absolutely fantastic. I wanted to cheat the system a little bit and use some privilege and ask a question first. So forgive me, teammates, I just couldn't help it. It's kind of a general question, but I want to kind of challenge all of you. I am a tired resident, and on occasion I happen to drive tired. I probably should not, but it happens. And I am certain that I have slid through my fair share of yellow lights that may have turned red a couple seconds earlier because I was just so tired. I was just trying to get home. I also happen to be a person, don't let the peaceful surroundings fool you. I have a short temper. So let's add a short temper and fatigue together. And then let's have me pulled over after a long call shift, maybe an overnight. If I just so happen to forget to follow, Mr. Jones, your advice, I don't maintain the peaceful nature that I was raised to have, or Ms. Jones, your advice, and I start talking when I shouldn't talk, or Mr. Sullivan, your advice, and I just lose it. If all of these things go wrong, what is my next available step, given that, I have already lost all of the above that you've just described? What are my rights? I guess I should ask it this way. If the officer asks me to step outside the vehicle, do I have to step outside the vehicle?
Julian, I heard both the lawyers say that the police can't do this or they can't do that. They do what they want to do. So there are consequences when you don't comply with them. And so I would immediately ask for a supervisor to the scene if I don't want to get out the car. That's my advice. But I would tell you, curb that attitude, because you'll be cruising for a bruising with those guys. It's not a plaything. And if you want to come hang out with me.
Did he freeze or we frozen?
I think you did, but I got the gist very quickly.
So I'll say this, Julian. So first of all, when the police order you to do stuff, you should probably comply, except for searching your car. Like never give them consent to search ever, right? And be polite. You don't have to be rude. But if they ask you to step out of the car, something else I give in my more in detail know your rights training is talk your way through. I'm not saying talk to the police like about what happened. Like, officer, I'm getting out of the car, my hands are raised, right? So think about if anybody's watching, right? If you're getting out of the car with your hands raised, then witnesses that you may not even know can verify that you stepped out of the car with your hands up, right? And if the officers have on a body cam, or if you have a camera in your car like I have in my car, then you get out and you talk your way through. So if the camera can't get it, but if the camera does catch whatever, if your talking is consistent with what the camera is showing, right, that's objective evidence. And you have a right, actually you have a right to tell the police fuck you. You do, right? You have a First Amendment right to do that. Would I suggest you do it? No, right? Because you don't want to pick a fight with the cops on the side of the road. So be respectful, right? But the police, if they're bad, they're going to do what they want anyway. So what I'm telling you to do, or what I'm suggesting you do, I'm not telling you to do anything. What I'm suggesting you to do is, if stuff goes really bad, I'm putting you in a position to be able to prove what happened despite stuff going really bad. Because there's nothing quite like being convicted or you getting killed, and the police's false narrative of what happened happens, and there's no recompense for your family. If you do the things that I'm suggesting to you, right, even if things go bad, then it can prove what happened anyway. Sort of like what happened with George Floyd, right? There are all these videos. The police are saying this happened. Video comes back, shows otherwise. The video years ago where the cop did a throwdown gun, said the guy was running, and then someone happened to be recording, and you saw where the cop faked the gun. So I'm not, and I believe I said it in my presentation, I'm not at all saying that you doing everything perfectly means you won't get killed or you won't get treated, like unconstitutionally. But when you're an accused person, like, it's much better if there are videos of you on dash cams or body cams, because quite frankly, with police culture, they cut for each other. That's just what they do. You trust and believe if a video it doesn't show well for the police, it wasn't on, it wasn't working. I mean, I have friends who are police officers. They know exactly how to put their body cams so that it doesn't get everything. And then they'll say, "You're stop resisting, right?" But the body cam's over here, you aren't resisting, but they're saying that, right? But if you do what I say and get the recorders and even the glasses, I'm telling you, these spy glasses, people don't even know that they're recording, right? They don't even know. So there are so many ways, if you keep a calm head, and if you lose your head, like you said, Julian, I mean, all you can do is hope that you haven't done enough damage to yourself. Maybe I can fix it, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you can hurt yourself, like from a legal perspective.
Can I say this too, Julian, right quick? Even more important than contact with the police, you shouldn't drive tired. You've invested so much in your life, and it would be a shame to get hurt because you were tired. And then furthermore, as far as the police, you have a confrontation with them, chances are you'll be up against the medical board trying to keep your license.
Mr. Jones, did you want to comment?
Yeah. I believe Don froze, but yeah, my man. The police, the way they get down, this is not something that's new, right? We have cell phones now, so now we catch more.
Those boys.
But now we see more. But as Ms. Jones was saying, yeah, if you got a bad cop, you got a bad cop, and so you just hope and pray that you can have enough sense, even in those moments, that you can give yourself the best potential, the power to be first alive or to build a good case for your attorney. Very important. Like Don said, the police gonna do what they're gonna do, no matter what. So if they tell you to get out the car and you got to be sensitive to that, you might as well get out the car, right? But get out the car safely and with your arms up and all that good stuff. I mean, we saw with Sandra Bland. the woman who unfortunately died in police custody. We saw that whole interaction. The police were with her. They forced her out of the car. She knew her rights. She expressed her rights, and she was within her power to do exactly what she did. But still, we saw the outcome. So yeah, man, I would say definitely, if you can, you got to manage the situation. That's where we are in dealing with law enforcement. You cannot control what they do. You can sometimes control what you do, but sometimes we're caught in emotions. I remember when my mother was diagnosed with cancer in 2013. She's going through treatments again now. I know she's going to be okay. But when she first got diagnosed, my sister and I found out that night. She came and picked me up. My sister had a broken tail light, right? The police pulled us over. And so I was in no mood. I was in no mood to interact with them. I knew they didn't have to pull us over, but they did. So they came up to the vehicle. They're shining the flashlight all in my face, all inside the car. We're no threat. My sister has no warrants. We're in a good neighborhood. And so, what I shouldn't have done that I did, I got out the car, right, to tell the police I want a supervisor on the scene because I know my rights. I want a supervisor. This is what I want. You got no right to do what you're doing. You're doing too much. Bring the supervisor here now. So thankfully, I wasn't encountering a police officer who said you getting out the car was a threat, because I shouldn't have done that, but I did, right? So you got to manage the situation. Looking back on it, I shouldn't have done it, but I was emotional. So yeah, we the police, we encounter them at different times in our lives. So like you're saying, you're tired, the temper might not always be there. You're just trying to get home. You just got to manage the situation, get home alive. That's what this book said in kid terms. Get home alive. So that's about it.
I'll make my comments concise, Julian. The thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that these scrubs don't save you. Okay. There's a common misconception that floats around medical schools as well as in residency and even around attendings, the hallways of attendingship, where they say, if you always have like a badge from a hospital on the desk, on the seat next to you, or a pair of scrubs or a white coat, and apparently that's supposed to be the magical, cloak of invisibility, so that when you get pulled over, the cops are kind of like, oh, this is a respect across fields and we're going to let you go. That doesn't work. And so I want to dispel that myth. And I want everybody that's on here to know that it does not have that power. You can still be on the ground with your face in the pavement in scrubs, in a white coat. They don't care. So don't let that be the one thing from medical school or from residency that you carry with yourself, is the knowledge that they're going to, somehow give you a pardon because you're a physician.
Yeah, and just briefly, you're right, man. Being an attorney gives you the same thing, right? The police don't care. They probably don't believe you. They don't want to see a license. They could care less because they know that club that they're in will protect them more than I can protect myself now. So yeah, man, I used to want to throw out the thing, well, I'm an attorney, here's my card, or slide them my bar card with my license. But yeah, but it's not gonna matter, man. It's
But you know what else? You're right. And you know what else? Again, we black first, right?
Right.
That's the first thing they see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that again. We black first. That's the first thing they see. And a lot of times they salty that we have education. Like I literally have had people be mad at me. I went to college on a full scholarship, and people are like, that's affirmative action. So even though I made straight A's, and when we went to school together, I made better grades than you. But everything I got is from affirmative action. So in some instances, it rubs people the wrong way because they think you all that, or you bougie, or you highfalutin. So I just think that at the end of the day, unfortunately, the police see us as a color, and we can do the best we can. And the truth is, we're not perfect. We know we're not perfect. We all drive tired, and especially in COVID times. My sister's a physician. I know she don't want to sleep at the hospital where COVID at. She want to get home so she can disinfect, and go be with her kids. So it's one thing, and so it's unrealistic. I think it's an unrealistic expectation that we're going to be perfect, but we can try to do the best we can under the situation. But I firmly, firmly, firmly believe that if you record and you don't tell them that you're recording and be polite, they will show the world who they are. right?
I'm going to go ahead and immediately let the questions flow because I used my privilege to get this one. Thank you all so very much. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Miss Chelsea Trimble. What do you do if the officer's name and or badge number is not visible and they refuse to give it to you?
So if you have, so I guess if you're not arrested, right, you can always take a picture of it, right? All the police cars have technology in there, um, and they're called MDTs, mobile data transmission, where you can tell who had the car at what time, where it was. So if you get the license plate or the number, and you have to make sure that you know the agency. That's a lot of people think the police are the police. They're just not, right? There are different agencies for different areas. So that's important because if you have the wrong policing agency and you have a number, it's not gonna coincide.
I would also say there have been times where I've just written down the partner's information and said this is the partner and this was the time, and so you know who was with this partner at this time, or write down who relieved the partner and say this is who this person showed up at this time. They relieved whoever was on this duty before them.
Yeah, I would say, get any information you can. If you can get a license plate number, that will help. If you are mindful of the area where the precinct is, that can also potentially help. If you're stopped, and of course, request that information. But if they don't give it to you, like we talked about previously, you can ask for a supervisor to come to the scene. If you do have a ticket that's being written and the police are not in your presence, you have a cell phone, call the 911 or the non-emergency number and say, hey, I'm involved in a situation and I'd like someone else to show up because the officer's not giving me information. You got to have many different things in your tool belt. One thing is not going to be the answer to all things, but yeah, you got to be creative, especially with someone who's purposely not giving you the information they know that they have to give you. So you do all that you can.
For me, I'm not big on grabbing phones and reaching for nothing. It's dangerous to reach for a phone. All phones look like guns to them. So that's my answer.
Yeah, but you literally, I mean, if you have an iPhone, for example, you can when the police are getting ready to stop you, if you're paying attention, Sullivan, and you're not talking to the people in your car on your phone, getting distracted, so you see the police, you just you put on your camera, you put it to video, and you start recording. They have no idea that they're being recorded. They just don't. Or you do swipe up, do voice memo. Right? So you don't, I'm not saying, hey, this is my phone. You see, I got you. I'm not saying that at all. Right? I'm saying do it on a sneaky. Y'all from the hood. You know how to
Everybody
sneak.
ain't sneaky.
Okay, you know how to sneak. I mean, when you
Yeah.
used to sneak out the house when you was a teenager, your mama said you couldn't go nowhere, you knew how to sneak. Come on, that's common
Expert.
sense. That's hood skills right there.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Are there some more questions?
Yes, so the next question we have, I think this was directed to Dr. Brown. This was a question that was asked earlier when you talked about how when you see a police officer acting in violation of a patient's rights, you don't hesitate to call them out, you don't hesitate to take the appropriate precautions. And given that you are a provider of color, it's almost instinctual, but do you find that other providers are doing the same for their patients, or that we're doing enough in the medical field so that people have the same conviction that you do when it comes to calling these police officers out?
So the first part of this is you got to recognize that every provider does not have the same scope of experiences. And that's what feeds into the reason why I pay attention to these things. If they've never been there at a hospital when someone was, being questioned by an officer, for example, you come after a car accident, there's always an officer that comes by and takes a report. It's just, if you are involved in an assault, there's always an officer that comes for a report. So you would have to have this experience at some point in your life to realize that, this might be something that when I'm a physician, I pay attention to. So that plus the history that exists between communities of color and law enforcement and policing in those communities helps to amplify the way that I practice. Now, in medical school, this is not taught. We don't have social justice curriculum to support what we do, and that is a travesty. That is a significant problem. The fact that most providers don't understand basic rights, and more importantly, their own rights, and then how to advocate for someone else's rights. So we have to create that as an adjunct to our learning so that we seem more informed as providers and can actually shift the narrative around what doctors' roles are in these situations. But with that said, I'm going to be very transparent. Like, if you've never had a negative interaction with a police officer, it's going to be very hard for you to want to advocate for a patient. In fact, you might see your own implicit bias exposed in thinking that that patient is automatically guilty. That happens all the time.
I'll say that that's not just for doctors, right? That's also for lawyers.
Absolutely correct.
So here in Houston, there was something that was made global. It was a global phenomenon. We had all the Black women judges who got elected, right? And I just sort of presume. Now I've been Black all my life, right? I saw my first dead body before. So I'm saying it just gives you a different perspective, right? And so when you make straight A's and they say, oh, you got your stuff because of affirmative action, when you know you smarter than them anyway, right? My sister's a physician. My sister says that they don't even think she's a physician. They think she like a nurse or something, right? Because Black people ain't supposed to be physicians. But I say that to say this, when all these Black judges got elected, I just presumed that white criminal defense lawyers understood that we do God's work, criminal defense lawyers. We have a thankless job, and we never have sufficient resources unless we have like a celebrity client, right? And most judges used to be prosecutors. So really it's a courtroom full of prosecutors and you and your client, that the only people that love your client is your client's family. And so I was just surprised going up on the elevator when all the Black judges got elected. There were white judges came to me, my white defense lawyers came to me and said, so Joe, because every Black person knows each other, right? Because that's just how we are, because we're monolithic. So Joe, do you know these people? In my mind, I'm thinking, what people? Now, I know exactly what people they talking about, right? And so they're like, well, I don't think they're qualified. Well, I haven't seen them. I'm like, some of these people been in this courthouse for over 20 years. So you literally have seen Black people that if you see them more than 5 times and they got a briefcase, they're probably lawyers, right? Right. So we don't all know each other, but I'd be like, okay, I've seen her 3 or 4 times. She a new lawyer because she has a briefcase, right? And then, so the white defense lawyers literally are not paying any attention to us, even though we're lawyers, they don't see us. And then when we get elected, then they say that we're not qualified. They speak in code, right? And I say to them, so when Ryan Patrick, who's Dan Patrick is one of our, is the governor, the guy under the governor, well, whoever he is. But he's really good friends with Trump, right? Which is crazy. But anyway, I say that to say this. When Ryan Patrick gets appointed to the bench at like 30 and has been practicing law for a whopping 5 years, and he's now the assistant U.S. attorney over the Southern District because Trump appointed him, right? And when he gets appointed at 30, nobody says anything, but we can have 56-year-old Black lawyers who've been practicing for 30 years, and the white criminal defense lawyers think they're not qualified. So there's a lot of implicit bias. You're presuming that as professionals, as very educated people, that people respect that we're educated. And the fact is, they don't. We Black. It simply boils down to that. And so I think that it's really important for people who are our allies, whether it's doctors or lawyers, to listen to Black voices, right? Ask us about our experiences. We're not making this up. It's real. We know we Black, even if we thought that our profession or our education could lift us over that. And just ask us how you can be helpful to us, because most of us know, like Dr. Brown has just shared things with you, which I think are nuggets, right? For a non-Black physician. So reach out to us and ask us how you can be helpful to us, because we alone can't change the system. We alone can't change implicit bias. We can't change systemic racism. We can't change microaggressions like by ourselves. We need people who don't look like us to talk to people who don't look like us, because some people just are not going to receive information from us because they innately think we're inferior to them, right? And they might trust you. Sort of like, and I'll bring this up, the Seattle Seahawks coach, I can't remember his name. He just taught, he's a white man. He just told white people to listen, right? He's like, listen to black people. They know what's going on. This is slavery. These are the manifestations of slavery. And black people know about slavery. And we need to sit down and be quiet and listen to them and help them. And we need not sit on the sidelines. We need to be anti-racist, because it's not enough just to be not racist. So we need our allies.
This is absolutely fantastic. To close us out, I would like one concise answer from each and every single one of our presenters today, and that is to this question. What one law would you write or have changed in the face of everything we had discussed today?
I'd get rid of qualified immunity for police officers.
I would get rid of the structure that's in place that allows for jury nullifications. Which means for me that one person shouldn't be able to decide one person shouldn't be able to just say someone's not guilty when the majority says that they are.
I think that can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I agree, but so can, double-edged for sure.
I'm still going to push on to our other two presenters. We're going to have to save this for round two. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, me personally, I would do away with the law that's on the ballot now. I think it's very, very discriminatory. The very system that they claim is prejudice against blacks and minority, they want to give full authority to in order to determine who gets released, knowing full well that most judges are former prosecutors. The sister just said, what is it, 5% DAs are black, maybe?
Less.
And less. And it's like asking the child molester to babysit. It's insane to me, and I think we need. I wish that Reclaiming Our Rights would bring a panel together of both sides, because the survey even said that 52% of the people in the beginning didn't know about being in contact. I mean, they're knowing their rights with the police officers when they're in contact. So just imagine how many people are unaware of what's going on. And I just think that education needs to take place on this. It's sad. I see our black males that have gotten their lives together late don't stand a chance when the only person that can let him go is a judge. Ayinde, if you think it's a struggle getting let go by that one person, imagine what we face standing in front of a judge. Mm-hmm. And that's the one I would do away with.
Okay.
I can't speak to a specific law. I will speak to a specific policy that affects me in the hospital, and that is the fact that when police officers arrive, their reports and what they've seen in transit is automatically added to our charts. That is a problem. If just like if an EMS arrives, what they see on the scene, what their establishment of the vitals and what their take is automatically taken as a part of the chart. And so that is conferred to the nurse. The nurse adds that in the chart. It usually has an entire ACR is what it's called, and it's included in every single patient visit. That's probably what I would change.
I think you should try to do it.
Amen to that. I'm not saying that I wouldn't approach it. I'm saying that I think that it should change. If I figure out how to do it sooner than later, that's what I would do. I do believe in working on social justice issues, so it's a good point.
We should exchange numbers offline, because I can help you contact like political people there.
Fair enough.
We hope this isn't going to be the last conversation of its kind. I think this was an incredible stepping stone for further discussion, and I'm so thankful to all of you. We are also thankful to you for being here. We want to shout out two of our organizers who weren't able to join us tonight, Dr. Nadia Mian, who Ms. Yolanda, you've been in contact with. She was one of the residents who also do Uchenna, and then Dr. David Hampton, who's also one of our resident organizers on this team. So just to end the night, we're going to ask you guys one more poll question just to get an idea of your prior knowledge compared to now after this discussion.
I don't see anything. Let me see.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being with us tonight.
Thank
So
you so much.
thanks for having me. And Nadia invited me. So are you going to tell whether people say they learned anything or not?
Yes, and then go through the preliminary results here. So from the pre-test, let's see, for how well do you know your rights? 12% of people said nothing. 52% said minimal knowledge. 33% said somewhat confident. 3% said completely confident. And now at our post-test, we have improved a lot, guys. So 0% for nothing, 13% minimal, 71% reported somewhat confident, and 17% are now completely confident. So thank you guys all so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bless you guys.
Thank you everyone. Have a good night and take care.
All right.
Thanks
Excellent
for
job,
having
y'all.
me.
All right.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
well.
very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.